First of all, what do you think triggered it to go from I hate going to that place to wait a minute, this place might not be such a bad idea? Because there was a change of mind, a change of heart, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah. Now that I'm remembering and reliving that, yes.
And not that it didn't come with its own sets of challenges. I know that different people who were there, their mindsets
Yes.
all come into play.
Yes, absolutely.
So, how many days did it take for you to realize, okay, maybe this isn't such a bad idea?
I'd be making that up.
Oh, okay.
Because a lot of that, as I've mentioned, is truly a blur.
Because this is day 7, and you've already got to that point
Which point?
of saying this
Yeah.
might be a good idea after
Right.
all.
Well, I know that when we've all spoken more recent times, and I'm reminded because my time in that transitional center in Los Angeles was extended for whatever reason. I don't know if it was the amount of time I was away. I don't know what it was really. I'd be ad-libbing that. I'd be making that up too. I really just have no recollection of why it got extended 3 or 4 additional months. But my loved ones, all the way up until weeks, a month ago, said, you stayed out of that house as much as it was permitted. You were constantly walking through the streets of LA. You were constantly on the public transportation, riding buses, just not trying to do any sightseeing. It was trying not to blow it by being in that house with some of the personalities.
Pushing your buttons.
Yeah,
whatever.
we all came from prison, and I'm reminded, I'm reliving a lot of this emotion, looking at it like I'm watching someone else's story of just how deeply impacted we are by long-term incarceration. And in fairness to the other guys, as I sit across the table from you today, same thing for them, because most of them were away, some of them for much longer than I was. 40, 45 years. Some of my guys, 45 years, Riff. And I wasn't keeping tally of it, but I know that I was out of that house a great deal, whereas some of the other guys seem to kind of just be
comfortable,
maybe wanting to stay behind that door, if that makes sense. Whereas I needed to get away, I needed to get out of there every day.
Okay, where they were more embracing of the anxiety and the fear and just staying behind, you were more like, the only way I'm going to get through this is if I go through that door. Because I remember when I finally got into contact with you, I was all happy that I actually found the place. And you said, I'm not there. I'm at a park down the street. It was a school or a park or something.
That day? The same day that you got there, you had called?
Right. We were.
Oh, Jay, good luck. I'm not there.
Yeah. I was so proud that I actually used MapQuest and everything and found your place, and then you're like, I don't hang out there if I can help it. So the one thing that I heard, the two things I heard you kind of struggling with in that was what's appropriate. Like you're one because of hypervigilance, because you're always on your toes and you're looking over your shoulder. What's normal when you're out here? And it seems like that's kind of what you were struggling with, and maybe still do to a certain degree when something happens, somebody interaction with somebody, good or bad, whatever, that at the end of it, there's this kind of question, self-reflection of, okay, did I handle that right? Did I come across too strong? How do you still deal with that? Do you still think about that much more? Or have you kind of gotten into a groove where you're... Because I know you can't live looking over your shoulder for 29 years and not have it impact you when you get out on the street.
True.
So I just wondered if like, what's appropriate? if that's a kind of something that you think about maybe more than most folks do.
I can't answer whether I think about it more than most,
Right.
but I do know that that's been a very deeply entrenched, long-term thing for me, maybe even prior to going in. But I started, as you know, I started getting locked up much younger, unfortunately, than even that age, that I went away in my 20s. So that hypervigilance, yes, it's still very much with me. I'm probably more conscious of it to not try to make other people uncomfortable about it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
When I'm around other people, I'm very cognizant of the fact of not snapping when I hear a certain sound, and now that I'm going through these steps with you, I just realized that probably am not literally snapping quite that way physically, like, what is it? What do I need to put out before it
Right.
puts me out or whatever it is? So you just made me aware I'm not reacting the same way physically. It's still here. But again, I'm not trying to make anybody else uncomfortable
Right.
with however I've been afflicted,
Sure.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yet, yeah, I've eased and hopefully will continue to ease into the transition from there to here, the outside generally.
So kind of a progression that you've just laid out is it becomes less physical, but the mental challenges are still there, the thought process,
Yeah,
but you're not having that like raw visceral response.
correct.
You're slowly adjusting. You mentioned in the video catching up, where, and I was wondering what exactly you meant by catching up, like, because you can't make up for time lost.
Cannot.
Was that a realization that took you a while to get to?
It's funny you mentioned that, and that you doted on that, because I felt that caused a reaction in me when I saw and heard myself saying that in that video that I did with Reggie. Because one of my upcoming books is going to be poems and prose that I wrote while I was in prison throughout my years. And one of the pieces I wrote, Griff, which just recently I had shared with somebody he does a little bit of writing, so I've been collaborating a little bit with him just to see what avenues might open up or otherwise. So one of my upcoming books, there's a piece I wrote about the human rat race, and it's a very, very appropriate, may make people uncomfortable, I don't know, but being uncomfortable is what allows most of us to grow when we're looking at things or having to work through things that we don't want to have to work through or deal with. That's where most growth actually I feel comes from. But I have found myself saying, I don't know how long I've found myself saying it, it's not time that gets lost, it's us that gets lost in time. Time isn't lost, we're lost in it. Does that make sense to you?
In a very profound kind of way. Yeah, I mean, you got to chew on that for a minute.
Absolutely you do.
And it can take different forms for different people. I think some people get consumed by the rat race and caught up in it. And other people get lost by not participating. They isolate themselves and remove themselves from it.
True.
And lost is lost. So either way, they're going to be missing out, whether they're overwhelmed and up to their neck in it, or locked in a room with the lights out, just waiting for night to come. Either way, they're lost.
Right. What an unfortunate reality. And if I may, I more recently, from my guy Dustin, I don't know if he had told me it was Nietzsche. I don't think it was Socrates or one of them, because I did a lot. I did a great deal of self-education while I was in there. Had I got that education prior to going in, maybe I wouldn't have had to been in a 6x9 reading the books I should have been reading when I was 10.
Right.
Nonetheless, I became a voracious reader inside, and he brought he brought he quoted, it might be Nietzsche, and I may be wrong on this, that said, "All who wander are not lost."
Mm.
And that really struck me.
Mm.
Not all who wander are lost.
Right.
God, did that hit me. So going back to the whole concept of time, not to go off track, 'cause that's a whole other
Right.
topic of its own. But time, yeah. The video just, it did. Sitting here watching them with you just.
So now,
much up.
looking back at stuff you said after 7 days,
Okay.
after getting released, I don't think there's anything that you heard right now that has changed drastically. You're pretty much on point when you were talking about it then,
Okay.
and you still feel like what you talked about was accurate and where you needed to be at that time.
Okay. Is that a question?
Yeah.
Can you rephrase that? Ask me again.
I'm wondering if, like, you're not looking at that video going, I didn't know what I was talking about
No.
there. I was off base there. I was confused about that.
Oh, I definitely was confused.
Well, yeah,
about
but
that.
that's what you're saying in the video is,
Right.
hey, I'm confused right now, a little bit nervous. I'm trying to get used to stuff, and it's because of your honesty and your genuineness. Then, I think you still feel strongly about what you said.
I would agree with that, but it also, I think it's just my one sister that I always allude to, and my mother, of course, who's on in age, and a couple others who make mention of, you've come so far. And I think it's just the support or the nurturement of a loved one where it's like, yeah, right. But then I watch some of these videos, Griff,
Mm-hmm.
and I realize I'm a million miles removed in some ways from that 7 days out or whatever the case may be during the different videos. It's showing me that I, in fact, over the almost 4 years now I've been out.
And I think what's interesting to me is that when I talk to you and I see you a million miles away from there, yet how quickly you go back when we watch the video.
Yeah, right.
You've progressed, but that's not a stranger. That's not somebody foreign that you can't relate to.
No, not at all.
You've made the progress, but the trauma that you've endured, it's an arm's reach away. You can reach out. You can reach back and grab it if you want to.
In front or to the side of me at any given time. You're right.
Wow.